Hey everyone, it's about 8:47 on this Monday morning. Yeah, I'm off today. As far as I know, I'm off. But I tried talking about this yesterday and I ended up doing 2 parts on it. But after watching finally some of Bound for Glory, I got it through a torrent, courtesy of whoever had the Dish TV and Sky Sports or whatever. And I'm gonna say this. Now I have nothing against Corrigan Hall, and I apologize if I pronounce it wrong. I have nothing against Corrigan Hall in Japan. I mean, I understand and respect the fact that it's basically the Madison Square Garden, if you will, for wrestling, because more wrestling has been obviously done there. More wrestling has obviously been done there than anywhere else. More than boxing, more than MMA, you name it. So I can understand, Wrestle One and TNA. I can understand TNA letting Wrestle One pick that venue for this joint promotional event. But I want to correct something. Now, I don't know if maybe the event sold out and maybe people were standing because they couldn't see. But honestly, what I saw there in some of those, while I was watching it, there were seemingly some empty seats. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't almost almost a nearly standing room, sold out crowd. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, folks. But when you have a few empty seats visible right off the bat, sorry, just in the headset here. But when you have some seats visible right off the bat, that's not very good. I mean, I can understand when they went San Diego last year for Bound for Glory, that because they pretty much knew they didn't sell out the Cox Arena, they had to film they had to do different camera angles so that nobody would see it. Yet, you had people exposing the fact that just by being in attendance there, exposing through Twitter and Facebook and all these other wrestling sites, exposing the fact that one half of the Cox Arena was empty. Excuse me there, I got a little bit of sniffles. But like I said, half the arena, a majority of that was empty. And that's not good. Now, I will give TNA credit that from a positive standpoint, having a nearly stand-a-room, sell-out crowd at Corrigan Hall in Japan, a legendary venue, that I'll give them credit. That is very, very good. Like I said, I will give them credit. That is very, very good. I'm not going to deny that. But you can almost tell that TNA does have some areas they need to work in if they're going to remain around for the next year or so, if not the next few years. One, if you're going to do a tape delay and you're going to have your announce team doing the announcing, have your announce team be there in some capacity live in the building. Don't have them say, oh, we're in studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're on tape delay and blah, 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 blah. It's like, not even WWE does that. They don't even do that. Not that I know of. I don't even think Ring of Honor would do that. And honestly, I don't think if he gets his promotion up and going, Jeff Jarrett does that. Excuse me. I don't think he does that either. I don't think if he ever gets his promotion up and running, he won't do that either. But, excuse me. But then again, maybe he will, maybe he won't. I can understand maybe with Wrestle Kingdom this upcoming January that, yeah, maybe he's going to have to do it that way, but then again, maybe not. Well, actually, now that I think about it, WWE has done this with Tribute to the Troops. But there have been a majority of the times later on that when they've gone to arenas for Tribute to the Troops, that they've had the announced team there, as far as I know. So yeah, WWE has done this, but it's only because of the fact, and it's only been a few times, that Tribute to the Troops used to be, elsewhere, used to be out of country. So they had to do it. And that's understandable there. There's a reason for that. But if this is a big event for you, probably one of your big 3 events, your signature event, your WrestleMania, you're going to have your announce team doing announcing, then have your announce team be there in the building. Have them be in Tokyo, Japan. Don't just have them, don't just have them come out and say, hey, we're in studio because it's tape delayed. Let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you, okay? Let me explain something to you. You see, when WWE did SummerSlam back in 1992, when they did SummerSlam, when they did SummerSlam back in 1992, yeah, it was on tape delay. Excuse me, they're just moving the mic a little bit. Yeah, it was on tape delay. And yeah, some people may or may not know the results already beforehand. But at least they had their announce team there. At least Vince McMahon, Bobby Heenan, all of them were there as far as I know. Unless they green screened it. From what I saw, they were there. Now, even if it was green screened, do you not think TNA could have done something similar? I mean, heck, what was it? Trying to think. IGW, I believe that was the name. It was an Australian wrestling promotion that got some pay-per-views. When they had their pay-per-view, which was Rodman Down Under, they were at least able to green screen Ted DiBiase and the play-by-play guy, I can't think of his name right now, in front of the video in front of the arena. Well, not in front of the arena, but basically green screen them so it looked like, in a sense, they were there. And like I said, you can't, TNA couldn't do that with Mike Tenay and Taz, have them green screen in some way saying that they're there. Instead, you have them come out and say, oh, by the way, we're in studios. Let me put it to you like this. If WWE did that with WrestleMania, that'd be pathetic. If Ring of Honor did that with one of their signature events, their WrestleMania, which in this case I think is Final Battle, it would be pathetic. I mean, I understand that financially TNA probably didn't have the money to do all that. And even if they did, they didn't want to waste it because they don't know what's going to happen in the future. I understand that too. Excuse me. Again, I can understand that too. But still, like I said, I can understand that too. But still, you should at least put a little bit more effort. And I'm not trying to be mean here or anything. I understand why TNA wanted to do this. They wanted to basically show that they are an alternative. That there's still that alternative that people could go to and enjoy. I can understand that. I get that. But, I think one of the things people are going to criticize about this event, you already have someone like Bruce Blitz criticizing it, calling it bound for crap. One thing people are going to criticize about it is the fact that TNA gave little to no effort in promoting. They gave little to no effort in at least going 50-50 with Wrestle 1. They gave no effort. It basically, it seems that they went 75-25 or 85-15 with Wrestle 1. In other words, they gave 75% to Wrestle 1 and kept 25%. Or gave them 85% and kept 15%. And what does that mean? It basically means that they gave 75 to 85% control of the show from production-wise, stage-wise, and even location-wise, with all due respect, to Wrestle 1. And they only kept 15 to 25%. And that was it. And when one looks at this, with all due respect to the great Muda and his Wrestle 1 promotion, when one thinks about it, this year's Bound for Glory, this weekend's Bound for Glory, was nothing more than a showcase for Wrestle 1. Not just a showcase for TNA, but a showcase for Wrestle 1. And here's why. Here's why it was a showcase. Here's why it was a showcase. Wrestle 1 has only been in existence for about a year now. So, how do you get people to know about you besides those in Japan? Because I'll give TNA credit. At least they acknowledge the fact that wrestling is big in Japan. Wrestling is a legit sport to those people in Japan. And worthy of enough to be covered by the local press, by the local media, and even placed in the papers. That's how well respected it is. But the point is, when one thinks about it, Bound for Glory this year wasn't just a showcase for TNA, it was mostly a showcase for Wrestle 1 to get the world to notice them. Because if you think outside of Japan that the world knows about Wrestle 1, they know about them, but they only know about them through the internet and all that. They haven't seen anything else. They haven't seen anything else. They know about it. Don't get us wrong. I mean, that's how I found out about Wrestle 1, so I found out through the internet. But that was it. And I knew by finding out through the internet, it was run by the Great Muta. That was it. There was nothing else. And basically, that's what I feel now looking at Bound for Glory and thinking about it. And I'm sure anybody would agree listening. That's what Bound for Glory was this year. It was a showcase for Wrestle 1 so that besides the internet, from a worldwide standpoint, they can get acknowledged. They can get noticed. They can get people talking about them. They can get other promotions in the States, in Japan, in other countries around the world intrigued in what Wrestle 1 can bring. So that's mainly what Bound for Glory was this year. I mean, yeah, you had your X Division match. You had your Knockouts match. But overall, it was interpromotional matches, one Wrestle 1 match, and one interpromotional tag match. And that was it. Nothing else. And again, all it was a showcase for Wrestle 1. That's all it was. Now, another thing I think a lot of people will probably say about this event was that back in the 90s, early to mid 90s, it would have made more sense for a company like TNA had they been around at that time, which they weren't. But had they been around at that time, it would have made more sense then, around the early to mid 90s, and even the late 90s, in some ways, to do an event in Tokyo, Japan, like Bound for Glory, because nobody would really know about the event. Nobody would really know what the results would be, what the stage set looked like, what the crowd in attendance looked like. They would have nothing really to critique just yet. Not really. I mean, sure, you have your dirt sheets and all that, but nothing like instantly. It would be more like, sort of like what the event was, delayed. But, back in that time frame, it would have made more sense. I mean, take a look at why WCW did, I think, the Super Brawl event in Japan one year. Take a look at why WWE did SummerSlam in the UK one year. Because they knew not everybody would know what the results would be. They knew there was no chance, besides through dirt sheets on a very delayed basis, no one would really know what the results were, what the attendance figures looked like, what the crowd looked like, until they saw the thing on pay-per-view. And that was it. That's the only way they knew. Nowadays, though, unless it's a special event, like let's say WWE's Tribute to the Troops, and it's out of the country. I mean, heck, I'll even point this out. I think one of the very first Tribute to the Troops, they did have the announce team there. And that was effort on WWE's part to do that. But even so, thing is, folks, I know TNA is trying their best, in a sense.